I'll conquer the world later.
All right, there have been so many interesting free agent signings today. We already dove into Nashville going gangbusters, grabbing Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea. Some particularly fascinating ones to me were Bertuzzi going to Chicago for 4 years for $5.5 million per. Suddenly, there's a bit of a supporting cast starting to take shape around Bedard. Jake DeBrusk getting 7 years at 5.5 from Vancouver is really interesting. He's probably going to get a solid chance to ride shotgun on Elias Pettersson's line. A day after getting bought out by the Oilers, Jack Campbell signs a 1-year $775 with Detroit. He's from Michigan. Like I said in yesterday's video, I hope he reestablishes himself as an NHL goalie here. Now with the pressure of the big contract and a Canadian market Stanley Cup contender off his shoulders, it's his hometown team, that one's definitely piqued my interest. The Flames also did some tidy work today. I'm a fan of those Ryan Lomberg and Jake Bean contracts. The one that really fascinates me though is Anthony Mantha. They signed him 1 year, 3.5. He's a big body. We know he's got some nice scoring touch, but consistency and health have always been the things with him. I'm not sure if him and Huberdeau know each other, but they both grew up in the Montreal area. I'm sure the Flames are hoping there can be some chemistry there. I want to focus this
Calgary didn't pick up any players. I want to talk about Calgary. Once a great team. They were a good team. You can't say that about them anymore. They were a fine, good team. They're horrible. They're a bad team now. Vancouver, they were a good team this season, but probably not going to be a great team this season. Excuse me. Like New Jersey. Islanders haven't been good. Buffalo's interesting. They haven't been good. They haven't been playoff good. But they're definitely like a standard team. Buffalo just needs a good goalie in that. There you go. If you're a Buffalo fan or you're the Buffalo GM or head coach watching this for some reason, do this. Do that.
This video though on 3 signings to 2 teams, basically keeping together and reuniting 2 duos. First, Sean Monahan signing with the Columbus Blue Jackets, 5 years, $5.5 million. You guys know he's one of my favorite players ever. I'm happy for him. And I know he just had a really nice bounce back season, but the term there is definitely more than I thought it was going to be. The connection here to Johnny Gaudreau is obvious from their Calgary days. That's clearly a big reason why this went down in Columbus and why he got that kind of money in term. Monahan signed for 5 years and Gaudreau has 5 years left on his contract. It's been a couple of years since they played on the same team and even longer since they played on the same line. Remember, for about the last year and a half of Gaudreau's time in Calgary, he played with Lindholm and Tkachuk. But for someone who watched over 95% of the games these two played together, when they're clicking and their chemistry's rolling, it's...
See, Gaudreau had the backhand, while Tkachuk had the forward hand and would shoot the goals. Well, Gaudreau would do the backhander goals. Now, some videos of mine will definitely have they'll definitely have the new outro, but not all of my radio show ones. There are going to be down the road more videos that aren't just radio show, that they have let me think, that they have no outro. And hopefully I don't continue doing that. Wee woo, wee woo.
It's absolute magic. That's what's going to be most interesting to me, though. How much of that chemistry is still going to be there? Is this going to work like it did in Calgary? Because Columbus just made a big-time commitment to it working. And what's it going to mean for the team and for the franchise if it doesn't? All of a sudden, I'm very interested in Columbus Blue Jackets games this season. The other one is the 2 former Flames, the 2 former Canucks, now joining each other in Boston. Lindholm has been linked to the Bruins since like the dawn of time. We saw that one coming. Boston paid a pretty penny to lock him in, though. 7 years, $7.75. At that price, you're hoping he can be a first-line centerman or at the very least a great great second-line centerman. And joining him is Nikita Zadorov, and I'm sorry, Canucks fans. Zadorov especially, there was hope in re-signing up until a couple days before free agency opened. For him to not only leave, but to go to Boston of all places, I can't help but feel for Canucks Nation on that one. He wasn't cheap either, $5 million a year for 6 years. Both of these guys got paid going to their third straight team together. Zadorov has already started endearing himself to Bruins fans, telling people not to call him Big Z ever again, and just raving about Boston as a sports city in general. The fans are going to love that guy. He's going to fit in perfectly as a big bad Bruin. Lindholm is the more intriguing one to me here. What's he going to be like in Boston? Although it was expensive, that team definitely got better. We'll see if those two can finally get out of round 2 while playing on the same team. This was one of the wildest day ones in free agency we've seen in a while. So much action and movement. If I missed your favorite or most impactful signing for your team, I'm sorry. Let me know in the comments down below who that was. Keep in mind, I'm going to talk about some of the other moves as well
about
over
the
coming days,
Penguins.
especially like Juraj Slafkovsky. Gotta talk about that one, even though that one. Alright, so I liked quite a bit of what Canadian teams did on day 1 of free agency, notably with how the Flames added pieces to help out their current roster while also having an eye on the rebuild. Apart from Sharangovich, nobody got more than 2 years, which is smart from Conroy given where the Flames are right now. As far as the pieces themselves, I like what Toronto added on D and in net, but I will say I'm not too crazy about the money and term for some of them, but hey, that's what you gotta do to get these guys in free agency. And I also think Vancouver did a decent job reloading in lieu of losing Lindholm and Zadorov. There are 2 moves from 2 Canadian teams that I want to hone in on here though. Number 1, that's Slafkovsky contract. After a season and a half of games played into his NHL career, and more than half a year away from his 21st birthday, Montreal has locked in Juraj Slafkovsky for 8 years at $7.6 million per season. Now we've seen this type of thing before. We saw it recently with Jack Hughes and with Tim Stützle as well. But as soon as his contract was announced, immediately it was met with divisiveness. From what I can tell, most Habs fans either like or straight up love this contract, but I've also seen people saying it's quite an overpay and too big a risk for a guy with 60 career points, and that they should have been more patient and waited until next year to get a better idea of who he is as a player. And I understand where those people are coming from. It's true, it is a risk, and it's being made on a very small NHL sample size. But if I'm a Habs fan, I see this as a positive. I would be much happier seeing Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon take educated gambles on guys like this with very high upside, and plenty of room and opportunity for the contract to turn into a steal, rather than locking in aging vets like Gallagher and Anderson who've already peaked in that regard. And yes, the kid was on fire the last half of the season, but again, what I see here is an educated gamble from Hughes and Gordon. I don't think they're giving him this money because he played well in the last half of the season. I think they're making this decision now because they're confident in what it could mean going forward. If you're completely convinced that this guy's a star in the making and he's only going to keep getting better, why not get it done now for less rather than waiting for it to happen and having to break the bank more because of it? Right now, you get him under Caulfield and Suzuki. Your big 3 up front is locked up for under $8 million each. That's nuts. The cap's increasing. If he had another breakout season upcoming here, you might not have got him for that number. At the very least, you save yourself an entire negotiation that you could focus on someone to surround that big 3. Not to mention the extra cap space itself you'll have to build around them. So yes, it's a gamble, but it's one that if I'm a Habs fan, I'm happy to see them take, versus a lot of other GMs who will happily back up the Brinks truck for aging vets on bad, long contracts. I like the strategy, even though it doesn't necessarily work out all the time. The Oilers were also fairly busy yesterday, basically bringing the band back together. Of the returnees, there are none of them I don't like, but Perry definitely got more than I thought he was going to. Nothing crazy though. I love that Brown and Janmark are both back at under $1.5 million each. I think those are solid moves come playoff time. I am surprised to see Henrique back, especially considering he was reportedly offered more money by other teams. He was probably lured by the fact that Edmonton has another serious shot to go all the way here. But I was most fascinated to see what they would do with the Jack Campbell buyout money. It's only for this year that they get $3.9 million in cap savings, but they still get it, and I was highly doubtful that a team in its cup window, the prime years of McDavid and Draisaitl, would leave that money unspent. I'm a fan of that Jeff Skinner signing, man. It's reminding me of Matt Duchene last year getting bought out by Nashville and signing a 1-year $3 million with Dallas. I wonder how Evander Kane feels about a top 6 spot probably being taken up by Jeff Skinner here, but to go from Buffalo with the big money contract where it definitely wasn't sunshine and rainbows for him, now you're being paid a fraction of that with much less pressure. Just go out and basically be a secondary scorer. Now that he makes 3 instead of 9, all of a sudden those numbers he put up last year in Buffalo are a steal if he can reproduce them instead of making him a buyout candidate. And knock on wood, he stays healthy and the Oilers don't have a season full of collapses like their first 2 months last year. He's actually going to get to play a playoff game for the first time in his 14-year career. I also like the Arvidsson signing. Like, if he stays healthy, he's a good top to middle 6 producer. Basically, he can be what Connor Brown was brought in to be before he became the ultimate bottom 6 playoff player. And I know technically the Oilers signed Brown for $775, but really it was for $3.25 million, which tells you the type of expectations they had for him coming in. Overall, some pretty shrewd moves from 2 teams who are at completely different parts of their competitive cycles. Montreal's chugging through their rebuild and Edmonton's tinkering to try to win a cup. Give me your thoughts on these moves, notably the Slafkovsky extension and the Jeff Skinner signing. For more videos on these 2 teams, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. You're awesome.
This one.
All right, so when it comes to those Leafs, we're on the heels of them opening free agency by making some decently significant moves on DN and net. I know Tanev and OEL are the flashier ones here, but I really do think that Stolarz one is going to end up being sneaky clutch for them. Obviously, there's still quite a bit of commotion around Mitch Marner, so much so that Berube and Treliving keep getting asked about it. Welcome to Toronto, boys. It's wild, but honestly, that's part of what makes it such a special hockey market. Recently, though, another big topic has started to make the rounds here that I definitely want to give my take on and that I think we should discuss. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Nick Kypreos, but if you aren't, he's a former NHLer who's now an insider in Toronto. He hosts a show on Sportsnet called Real Kipper and Born that's very Leafs heavy, and I actually enjoy the show quite a bit. Well, Kypreos had a very interesting quote in a recent episode. From what I'm hearing, the Leafs are contemplating taking the captaincy away from Tavares and giving it to Austin. They will talk about it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's real. And another Toronto insider, James Myrtle, mentioned that Matthews wants it. Now, I will admit that as time goes on, it's looking more and more inevitable that Austin Matthews is going to be the next captain of the Maple Leafs. If you follow this channel, you know Matthews is one of my favorite players, but you also know that my personal pick for the next captain would be Morgan Riley. That being said, I definitely don't think Matthews is a bad choice once Tavares is gone. The key words there being once he's gone. You've got a guy here who, to this day, still incurs the wrath of Islander fans when he goes back there because he chose to go home. I know most of the reason they're mad is because of how he handled the situation, but still, he badly wanted to come home and represent the Toronto Maple Leafs. Remember back to the Tavares sweepstakes, there were a lot of places he could have gone or stayed that would have been a lot easier in terms of media, pressure, and even playoff success. But instead, he chose crazy Toronto because it means something special to him to pull over that sweater and that logo. Those Johnny Pajama pictures, they weren't AI. Yes, he's regressing as a player, but there's only 1 year left on his contract. With how well he's represented the team, the franchise, the city, he's been a class act through and through, and he's given you some really productive years on that contract. If he's still a Leaf this year, I just don't understand why you wouldn't honor his captaincy out of respect for him and just because it makes the most sense. Like, why would you make waves with this right now where you're going to have plenty of time to have a new captain? I really don't see a guy here who deserves the Blake Wheeler treatment. The only two ways it makes sense for me for Tavares not to be the captain of the Leafs this year is one, he gets traded, or B, they pull a Conroy Iginla circa 2004 where Conroy voluntarily chose to give the captaincy to Iginla. There's no need to pull a San Jose from back in the day here where Marleau was the captain.
Are you seriously talking about Matthews losing the captaincy to John Tavares? Tavares, man. Tavares is kind of like a backup guy. And if he goes back to Islander country, he would... Voice crack, sorry. He would do the same, but he would arguably probably be worse on the Islanders team than he is on the Maple Leafs. It's gonna get a bunch of fans going crazy.
Captain, he got stripped of it and it was given to Thornton. Then Thornton got stripped of it and it was given to Pavelski. And all three of them remained on the team. What a weird situation. I just don't see a huge benefit from switching the letters around prematurely. If Matthews really wants it, I'm sure he can wait a year. And honestly, I find it kind of hard to believe that Matthews would want that he'd want them to be like, yeah, strip it off Tavares and give it to me. I'm not questioning Kypreos' report. It's just like, why? Why is this even a conversation in the organization? Like, if Tavares had 4 or 5 years left on his deal, then I guess I get it. But even back to when this was talked about with Phaneuf, about stripping him of his captaincy, that was way more valid and reasonable than this one. And even with that one, it was like, do you really need to do that? I don't think so. Especially with how long they went without a captain from Phaneuf to Tavares. They took their sweet time, multiple seasons, so it'd be kind of weird for them to go and take it away from the guy that they finally chose. I know a lot of people who were there when he was named captain aren't there anymore, like Babcock and Dubas, but even so, just from an organizational point of view, I just don't think it makes much sense. But now I pass it to you. This is going to be interesting to see what you guys have to say about this. Not even it happening, but the fact that it's even a serious conversation happening within the organization, that's kind of nuts to me. Like, if Matthews is going to be the captain, trust me, he's going to have plenty of time to wear that and soak it all in. I just don't think now is the time to do so, unless 91's wearing a different jersey come the fall. If you want more Leafs content, I'm happy to talk about them. Please like the video and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. You're awesome.
I bet there's a Johnny Hockey video. I bet there's an Eek video out there somewhere. Somewhere out there.
Welcome to part 3 of our coverage of the NHL's free agent frenzy. And today we start with a tale as old as time. The Ottawa Senators back to making bad decisions. It makes me feel cozy inside. The old winds are blowing in as the Sens are so cap-strapped for a bad team that they're having to send players and assets away just to free up money to retain other players. Joseph was sent to the Blues along with the 2025 third rounder for future considerations. That's it. They just shipped him away along with draft assets that they don't really have the luxury to blow. They did manage to re-sign Shane Pinto. He went from league minimum to an AAV of 3.75, and obviously Pinto was the better player, and the Sens needed to find a way to sign him and not go to arbitration. But it's not great to lose an asset because of cap mismanagement. They also added Michael Amadio from Vegas for 3 years and Noah Gregor from the Leafs for 1, and that's some okay depth for them. Amadio has been on a lot of smaller contracts. This is his first 3-year deal since his ELC, so nice to see him get some term though, but at 2.6, it might be a bit much, but hey, I'm happy for him. But the Sens could not stay on the path and had to go off the rails again. Remember when they traded a first and second round pick for homeboy Jacob Chychrun? And I mean, this trade, just getting Chychrun off of Arizona, had been anticipated for over a year. Well, that reunion is now done, and they've sent him to Washington for a third round pick and Nick Jensen. Man, this one, it does not make a lot of sense to me. Yes, he only has 1 year left on his contract, but that is such a poor return. So, just like that, Canada Day, the Sens are back on the liquor, making an awful trade. They shed $500,000 in cap to send out a 26-year-old defenseman who just had one of his best scoring seasons for a 33-year-old Nick Jensen, who will be 34 by the time the season starts. And I mean, he has term, as they'll have him until he's 36, but Chychrun, as I mentioned, was on an expiring deal, so maybe they knew he didn't want to sign, and maybe they thought they couldn't get much for him at the trade deadline and just wanted to salvage assets. But if you're going into a year when you're trying to convince Linus Ullmark as well to stay, maybe you want to keep Chychrun around as well. Questionable to say the least, and oh yeah, they also picked up David Perron for 2 years at $4 million. I don't know. Chychrun, a great pickup for the Caps, and I really like what they've done so far. Along with Chychrun, they've managed to land one of free agency's most coveted D-men in Matt Roy, who signed a 7-year, $40 million deal. That's just under $6 a year. It's a good deal for a very serviceable right-handed D-man who is a bit of a late bloomer. I mean, he's 29, he's only played in 360 games, and because of the lack of experience, he was going to grab a lower price tag than someone like Brady Shea. The Caps also traded for Mangiapane from Calgary during the draft.
I want to talk about this. This isn't really to hockey or the NHL. And if you're watching this, yes, this is why I go. Alrighty. Sometimes I can control it, sometimes I can't. I don't got a sickness. Well, won't say it's a sickness or disease. If you see me doing it, remember, sometimes I can control it, sometimes I can't, okay?
As they continue to acquire pieces in their forever win now mode while Ovi still skates and continues to post his shirtless boiler pics. But on paper, the Caps will look to be a better team, at least for now. It looks like there could be a bit more life in them than their pathetic first round sweeping by the Rangers. And staying on red-colored teams, we have the Devils. They bolstered their blue line as well. Bolstered, not boistered. Signing Brendan Dillon from Winnipeg, and Brett Pesce from Carolina. Pesce was linked to the Devils during the draft, so no surprise that they went after him and landed their big fish. He comes in at 5.5 for 6. Then Dillon from Winnipeg. I know Winnipeg was trying to keep him, so him walking eastward is both sad for them and me. I don't like the Devils becoming more defensively sound. They also added Thomas Tatar for 1 year at 1.8. Saw a little scoring depth. Good moves overall by the Devils. Thank God there was no all-star goalie available to them. Next year, I might not be able to say too much. The Rangers signed 3 guys that I don't really know. Sam Carrick and 2 AHL players. I'm going to do another video, however, talking about the Trouba situation, so expect that tonight or tomorrow.